Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Leadnap Gaming. Maybe you're a new player looking to get into the verse, or maybe 312 has arrived and you're a long-time player looking for a starter that won't require you to log out for a few hours every other hour. Either way, today we're looking at starter ships for under $80.
Systems activated. Systems on.
As I mentioned in the introduction today, we're going to look at the different starter ships in Star Citizen that are under $80. Generally speaking, this means a ship that has a game package attached. Though in a few examples, we are going to look at some standalone ships under $80 as well. As the community has now lost its mind, learning that in 312, ship claim timers and expedite costs are changing for the worse, many players are facing the reality that if their beloved ship jumps into QT and leaves them behind, they have a 2 to 3 hour wait to play Star Citizen. While I think this is fine in a more polished version of the game, for Alpha 3.12, this is just unacceptable, especially considering that CAG is about to take the next month off and then follow it up with weeks of meetings. In 3.12, starter ships will have a reduced timer comparatively than they have now, meaning even the space whales out there should be paying attention to this video. For each of these ships under $80, I looked at 3 tests: PvE combat against a Crime Stat 1 bounty, courier missions and small cargo runs, and a banking test that checks its in-atmo flight characteristics. Now, to be fair, I am not the most amazing dogfighter in Star Citizen, so my style's probably a lot closer to a player new to the verse. In a few ships, the auto assist worked. In one, the missile lock worked. This is a rough scientific approach, so if your favorite ship didn't perform as hot with me at the controls, it doesn't mean your ship's bad. While the controls are identical in every ship, the more you fly a specific ship, the more you learn its own nuances in its flight model and how the weapons work. Keep in mind, I had to buy a few of these just for the tests. A few of these ships also rely pretty heavily on their missile complement to aid their combat power, and unfortunately, that turned out to be a little buggy during testing. This is of course a fact of Star Citizen, so I felt these results were worthy of retaining. Our first ship is the Mustang Alpha, long time promoted as the $45 starter to take because it had a $5 extra value in its melt. Today this is no longer true, so while we look at this against all the other starters, keep in mind its most direct feature competitor is just the Aurora. Out the gate, the Mustang looks pretty cool since the rework done a while back. Once you get in, you're greeted with one of the best pilot views in the entire game. This is F-16 level viewing. I really like the way the instrument panel isn't here, and flight from up here is enjoyable and easy to perform. You never wonder where the mass of the ship is behind you, which can be a problem in some other ships. I was pleasantly surprised by the combat performance, as this is the lowest tier starter ship. It's no delete key, but after cutting your teeth on some Crime Stat 1 bounties, I could see a Mustang pilot taking this up and trying it out on some larger ones. Which I suppose isn't a surprise then that this is the fighter of the two, and despite a rework that was supposed to allow package running, you can't. There's probably a way, but I couldn't figure it out, and I've been in the verse a long time. A true new player will not get it either then. The Mustang also failed to perform well at all during the bank test. This was probably overall the worst contender in that test. However, Mustang's a good choice, nice and cheap, and as long as you don't expect more from it than it's meant to be, you'll be quite satisfied. The only thing that sticks out to me though about this ship is it really doesn't feel like a Star Citizen ship. The look could come from any sci-fi game, and if you remove the instrument panel, it just doesn't have that Star Citizen feel, well, until the canopy randomly opens and closes in flight. Next up then is the Aurora MR. This is the other $45 contender, and it's worth pointing out that this was my first Star Citizen ship. Admittedly, the Mustang is the ship you're supposed to buy if you want to be a fighter pilot, so the Aurora's lackluster combat performance isn't really a shock. It can do it though, but it is a bit of a grind. Unlike its peer, however, it has both a bed and can run packages. Major plus. Also, unlike its peer in this segment, the Aurora performed rather well in the bank test, which was quite the surprise to me. As I said before, I spent a lot of time in this ship, especially when it took 45 minutes to QT from Olisar to Lorville. Despite the cockpit feeling a little out of place, CIG really did a good job in here where the MFDs are all easily visible without taking away from the view, even if some of the data is hard to read as a result. Now, the struts are not universally loved, but in this version, they don't get in the way and they give you that feeling of enclosure. In fact, they're important to the overall Star Citizen vibe. Despite ships like the Star Runner or 890 Jump, the Aurora really does feel remarkably Star Citizen. It pulls off the, wow, there's quite a bit of room in here feeling, and it has these cool doors which hint at the animation prowess of CIG, which takes us to the ship most upgraded to from the $45 segment, the Avenger Titan. Again, I spent a ton of time in this ship, back when we had re-entry heat animation too, which helped sell the penguin black heat tiles on the exterior. The Titan performs rather well in combat, owing to that nice big gun on the front. No one should be surprised by this then, it is after all a fighter, though unlike the other dedicated fighters of the verse, it has cargo and a bed, which means it does just fine running courier packages because it's super easy to fit them into one of the best small cargo bays in the game. Cargo fits as well, quite a bit comparatively speaking, though you should note that when you're full of cargo, you will need to use the ladder and canopy on the front. In the bank test I gave it a B+, nothing to write home about, but not bad either, and being above par. This ship is old enough it comes from an era when Star Citizen ships actually had light bulbs inside them, before you needed a flashlight for everything, which happens to be a selling point to me. CIG struck gold on this interior in my opinion and should probably evaluate giving us ships like this again. Unfortunately, it's also old enough that they had something funky going on with the instrument panel, and CIG made it even worse since. Before, you had these small screens as dedicated panels that gave you what are full-size MFDs on other ships. It was wonky, but if this was your second ship, you didn't know any better. Now they put these caution alert lights down here. This is a problem for any number of reasons. First, that only leaves you 2 MFDs, and I prefer at least 3 data points. Thankfully, your target data, circa 3.0, still lives in that top right corner, letting you free up the right MFD. I've always hated how fake and low effort this instrument panel is. What was meant to feel old in comparison just sucks in a game so well known for its art. I really wish this had a panel like the Mustang. Likewise, for the caution indicators, they can't be seen because they're below the pilot's line of vision, making them useless. Never mind horribly scaled. I love this ship. It's such a performer, and with 312's changes, I see this really seeing more use again from a lot of players. That said, at least for me, the instrument panel issue will have me looking to others. It's petty, but it bugs me. I used to spend the 30 minutes of QT laying in the bed because it looked better. The Stalker is also an option for $5 more in the standalone group, but you lose cargo for bounty hunting pods that are still for now entirely useless. Keep in mind, $5 to upgrade your Titan down the road if this feature does become useful. Still, this is an absolute bargain price for so much firepower and utility tied together. Hands down, this is the ship most in the verse say to get for a reason. Everyone hates some part of this ship's aesthetic, the exterior, the interior, the pilot's seat, so join the club and fly one. Of course, there is another option for only slightly more. The Reliant series are one of those ships you rarely see, and no doubt Reliant owners are probably going to be pretty mad at me for including it here. Odd, and like the ship, that's because it's a sleeper. I took the core out both because I own one, but because it's the only universally available Reliant. Sure, this sailboat-style primary flight mode might put you off, but unlike when they were released, you can choose which style you want to fly with the K key, which is the VTOL button. What won't put you off is the sheer amount of firepower this starter ship carries. Step aside Avenger pilots, the core has more guns than any other starter. Missiles too, which I didn't test because the target died too quickly. Keep in mind, this is the cargo hauling variant and not the fighter. The MISC styling really works on small ships, making this awesome cargo bay feel both full-on sci-fi, but also full-on Star Citizen. It fills nicely with cargo too, though not as much as an Avenger. Package missions are also incredibly easy as a result. The ship banks below the curve in the bank test, and I attempted it in both flight modes. Still, while the bank isn't great, the overall flight in atmosphere and in space were quite pleasant. Now keep in mind, the Reliants offer something no other starters have: VTOL engines and multi-crew capability. The VTOL's unfortunately tied to the landing gear for now, so the flight style can be selected with the VTOL key. Small price to pay, especially because it takes longer to make the transition as a result. Still, this lets you ground break pretty effectively if you know how. Today the Copilot doesn't do much, but down the road when multi-crew play is really done up, the Reliant is going to give you a lot more. The Reliant series also give you the best visibility you can find in the verse, especially in the vertical sailboat mode. And while flat, landings are so easy because not only can you see everything, but the ship sits only a few inches off the ground, meaning your landing is practically going to be at normal standing height. Downside to this is of course the massive footprint of the ship, so you're going to need that visibility to find the best places to land. The other factor to consider here is this. I tested the always available core, which is a great ship. The Tana, however, is the better buy if you can get one. The Tana is a heavy fighter, so you get even more firepower. Better yet, you gain 2 beds, which the core lacks, as well as some personal storage, which will have value down the road. There's still ample space inside for package missions, and you're not really giving up a whole lot when it comes to the 6 SU of cargo grid going away. Sorry, Reliant Owners Club, the secret's out. Continuing the trend for starters that offer options, the 300 series is a solid choice. I tested the 325, since the vanilla 300 offers little that the slightly more expensive specialized 315 and 325 don't. Of note, the 315 gives up a weapon's hardpoint for a nose-based tractor beam, which, while not in the game yet, in 2021 has quite a bit of potential to really gain some value. The 325 is the fighter version, and if you're considering this option, it's the one to go with. It still has a cargo grid, same as the 300 in fact. Still, aside from the Nomad, it's the only starter to offer a full kitchen, toilet, and bed. Unlike the Nomad, the quarters feel spacious and comfortable because you have this amazing window and it's not cut off by airlocking doors that you don't need on a solo ship. Now, I did take the fighter version, but the 325 is a floating delete key for smaller ships. Again, like the core, it has missiles, but I never even tried because, and he's dead. Sure, the back feels like a Boeing business jet, but the combat power suggests something more like an FA-18 instead. Package running is easy, though the latter can be an annoyance if you have to move multiple boxes. Thankfully in 312, the cargo grid should work, vastly improving the efficiency and value in this role, and preventing the boxes from messing up that high-grade carpet up top. The bank test performance was quite good, especially considering this is a larger ship. The Origin scoop also helps. Refueling? What's that? The last true contender is then the C8X Pisces. It's sold in a starter package, despite CAG calling it a shuttle and not a regular ship. If you own a Carrack that will soon take 3 hours to claim, you've got one of these to play with too. Lucky you. I tested the beefier C8X Expedition, both because it's better armed, but because it's the one sold as a starter package as well. I was genuinely surprised by how well it performed against a Crime Stat 1 bounty. Not too shabby, Anvil, and I bet if the missiles had locked, it would have been even better. Looking at this, there's no doubt about its courier and cargo abilities, and even though the bank test gave it practically failing marks, I did find that if you fly it how it wants to be flown, it will perform admirably. The moment you try to make it do what it doesn't want to do, and it won't. Really, this is a hard ship not to promote, especially over the 125A. The lack of a bed and the flight characteristics are what hold it back for me, and there's an army of citizens out there who do champion this craft. I'm a big Anvil fan, and the interior of this thing is pretty damn perfect. While the MFDs leave a lot to be desired, giving you full visibility of only 2, I do see the shields in the corner here, which gives me enough to know what I need most of the time. CIG has learned because the old Anvil would block the view and make the MFDs visible. This is preferable. The other nifty trick the Pisces brings is assured hangar acceptance. The Carrack and all other hangar ships can receive one. Of course, the 125A also has this. Which is where the honorable mention of the 125A comes in. Now, I do think this is one of the best starter ships out there to get. Problem is, it's not universally available. There's no game pack for it, meaning this is really a ship current players with fleets should consider. New players can eye them if they want to upgrade, and it's in the store, or buy it in the verse. Because you're going to have to get one either in-game or wait for them to be sold, I left my upgrades on. I consider this an honorable mention, even if I still think it's one everyone should get. No surprise then, it performs quite well against Crime Stat 1 bounties, and yeah, I was able to get the missiles off in the test, which is just another reason it doesn't quite fit in the testing with the rest. Courier missions are a breeze, and 2SU exist if you need to move something expensive but small. The bank test puts us in the middle of the road, but again, continual afterburn ability and the overall speed and acceleration should be noted under the published results. The 125A has a nice interior, and it's worth noting, and this is a me thing, that it's got the only bed in Star Citizen that would be comfortable and dark enough to sleep in, which always surprises me with this massive canopy. The 125A is a fantastic ship overall to own for utility purposes. It's great for 312 Reclaim Warriors, and a ship you'll probably never melt because it's cheap and it does utility better than almost anything else, Pisces being the only real competitor. Problem is, it isn't a good starter, and is best owned by players long into the verse who have other options for certain mission profiles. The Avenger is the better of the two for new players or folks who own a single ship. Fortunately, you'll be able to upgrade your Avenger into that 125A when the day comes that you don't need everything else the Avenger gave you. Lastly, there's one more standalone ship to consider under 80, though sold over 80 as a game package. This would be the Arrow, which is a dedicated fighter. I included this because of 312, and because if you're killing a 2-hour timer for your real ship, running a few bounties could be worth your time. Obviously, there's no cargo nor courier ability here. This is a terrible starter ship, but not a bad small ship for very specific commuter utility. I also included it because it offered an interesting litmus test for combat. I had a far easier time in most of the other starters killing Crime Stat 1 bounties than I did in the Arrow. Now keep in mind, the Arrow has a lot better ability against players. The Nomad package comes in at $90, but remarkably the ship slid down to the $70 standalone. Being $5 less than the Arrow, most will argue it should have been included in these tests. With the 312 considerations, I don't think this ship will be in the starter group for quick reclaim, especially because it's a top contender for the play that CIG is trying to stop with this change. Its combat performance is on par with most of these others. I've banked in it and I can say it performs just under middle of the road, though like the Pisces, it doesn't like to be told what to do outside of its comfort zone. It carries a rock, none of the others can. That's its trick. Thing is, most players eyeing a starter for 312 use own a ship that's more efficient at doing just that, especially when you have to pay for it at the pump. The new players, it's not under $80. If you're spending $90, go take a look, but it's otherwise overrated in my opinion. I'm not going to name a winner or a loser. Hopefully, this video gave you an interesting practical comparison, something that could be measured in a manner that was subjective. It won't surprise me if a few of you had your eyes opened about the Reliants, for example, and the only one of these I never really spent any time in was the Mustang, which was a pretty pleasant surprise. The thing is, for true starter gameplay, most of these will suit you well. A few of them require you to give up something, but generally that's cargo space, which, well, there's a chorus out there to say otherwise, I'm telling you isn't enough to matter. The Avenger, for example, will make more money doing bounties in 10 minutes than it would ever make running cargo in the same amount of time. Which ship surprised you? What's your pick from these results for overall best? Let's talk in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe if you haven't, and I will catch you all next time.